We've got one final section here with rationalizing denominators. This is division, but it's the best we can do, as we talked about in the last video, is rationalize them. Now, this is going to be the hardest section here, but it's a real common trick in college algebra and beyond calculus. So it's a really good idea to see this trick. So let's talk about it. So what we saw before is that if I had, for instance, 4 over the square root of 2, I would rationalize it by multiplying the top and the bottom by the square root of 2. But with this 4 added to the square root of 2, I can't do that. If I just multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 2, I would have to FOIL this through. That would not work. I would create 4 square root of 2 plus 2. It wouldn't solve the problem. So the answer to that is to use an old trick. One of the patterns that we saw when we've multiplied is that if you multiply something times itself with the opposite sign, you are going to eliminate the middle. And the pattern became you could square the front, you give it a minus, and you could square the back. Do you remember this? So it's my favorite factoring pattern because it's so easy. Okay, so we're going to multiply by the identical thing on the denominator, except we're going to give it the opposite sign. So I'm going to multiply by 4 minus square root of 2. Now you can't just do it to the bottom, so you have to do it to the top as well. Now the reason we have selected this is because it is going to follow this pattern right here, and it's going to allow me to just square the first one, square the back one, and put a minus between them. So here's what I mean. So on the bottom now, this pattern, which we saw in a few videos ago, I believe, you can square the front, you'd get 16. You square the back, you get 2, and you put a minus between them. Well, that's 14. Now, on the top, you still have to multiply this thing through. We're not done yet. We still have to do this, which we just FOIL out. Well, they're doing this in kind of a strange way. They see where it's going. So I would get 16 minus 4 square root of 2 over 14. Now what they're doing is, then we saw that we can pull out a GCF out of both of these. So here's what they're doing to simplify it. They're pulling a 2 out of there, and they get 8 minus 2 square root of 2. And on the bottom, 14 is 2 times 7. So they're factoring it in order to get rid of the common denominator. What have I done here? I've missed something, or they don't agree with me. Let's see. Yeah, no, I think I'm right. What have I done? 16 minus 2. Oh, I see what they just didn't put theirs back in. So ours are equivalent answers. So we got 8 minus 2 square root of 2 over 7, which is what I would do. I would leave it like that. Okay, so that was a little more complicated than one should be to start with, but let's go here. Our trick is we're going to multiply it by the opposite sign. Everything stayed the same, but now a minus in there. This is always the trick to rationalize it if it has a plus or minus in the denominator. So the top, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. We're just going to multiply those. But the bottom, the reason we're selecting this is because 2 squared is 4. You always give a minus. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is minus 3, or is 3. So we've got this. So I've got 2. Now let's multiply this through. I'm going to have 4 minus 2 square root of 3, and on the bottom I just have 1. So 4 minus 2 square root of 3 is the best we can do. Okay, pause this and try it if you want, but here we go if you want to see it. To rationalize this, I have this. Okay, so the top, I'm going to go ahead and FOIL the top, and I'd get 25 minus 5 square root of 3. The bottom, the reason we're doing this is the square of the front is 25, the square of the back, it's always a minus, square of the back's minus 3. So I've got 25 minus 5 square root of 3 over 22. Now I would check to see if I can factor this down and reduce it. So the top does have a common factor of a 5, but it won't. There's nothing on the bottom to cancel it with. So yeah, that's the best I can do. Okay, I don't know what variation this is going to be. Don't know if anything changes here. Same trick, opposite sign. So yeah, I don't like the way they're showing it because they're showing it the whole time with the factor taken out. If I would have done it, I would have just got 10 plus 5 square root of 3. It's not necessary to always factor it. I think the only difference is they started with a minus here, but it's the same trick. It doesn't change anything. Instead, I'll choose a plus. Now if I distribute on the top, so I got to multiply the top. Remember, it gets me 3 plus 3 square root of 5. Now on the bottom, the reason I'm doing this trick, 1 squared is 1, minus square root of 5 times itself is minus 5. I've got 3 plus 3 square root of 5 over negative 4. I would check to see if I could factor this down and pull a GCF out of the top and cancel it down on the bottom, but it doesn't. There's nothing. Okay, I'm going to do this again. All right, we're going to multiply through the top. We get 8 plus 2 square root of 6. On the bottom here, I've got, so the trick is always square the first one, square the second one, put a minus in the middle. So I've got 8 plus 2 square root of 6 over 10. Now this one can be reduced. I'm going to pull a GCF out of the top, would be a 2. So I'm left with 4 plus the square root of 6 over 2 times 5. I'm just going to factor it down so I can show you again what's really happening here. The 2's would cancel, and my final answer would be this. Okay, we've got variables introduced here, but nothing is going to change about that. Look how strange this is, but oh, it's also got 2 roots. I see what we're doing. It doesn't change anything. If I select the exact same thing with the opposite sign, it's still going to work. So let's do it. Yeah, I don't like the way they're doing it, but yeah, I don't like the way they're doing it. So let me go back a slide. So this would give me 3u on the top plus the square root of 18. On the bottom, square root of u times, so we square the first one, always get a minus, square the back one, I get minus 6. This actually, this could break down. I don't know if they did. But so that's 9 times 2, so I could simplify that. Okay, I know this is getting weird, but that's how we do it. We're happy because we got rid of the roots in the denominator. So I'm going to choose square root of x minus the square root of 2. Okay, now we're going to distribute the top. Do you see that? I would get this. Do you remember? I'm sending them to both. Now the trick on the bottom is square the first one, you get x. Always a minus sign, square the back, you get a 2. Okay, I was checking to see if you could simplify anything, and that's the best you can do. Okay, I'd love it if you try it yourself. Okay, on the top, distributing that through, I'm going to get 10y plus the square root of 30. On the bottom, now I've got y minus 3. Okay, looking to see if anything simplifies. It doesn't, and I'm done. Okay, yeah, the only thing, I think this is our last group of questions here. It's going to get really confusing, but it's all going to be the same thing. The top is just going to be a lot more difficult. So when we multiply that out, whoops, oh, they left it like that? Okay. Well, that would be easier. Let me show you. Let me take you through one and do one of our own. So The trick is the same. Same trick. So I've taken the bottom but given it the opposite sign. Now let's do the bottom first, and I would have P, always a minus sign, and a 2. Now the top here, what I thought that what we would do you remember we've done some of this where we multiplied something by itself? We did this in the multiplication section where you could FOIL it out, or you could see that the pattern is going to be P plus. Do you remember this? We did this. So I would have thought they would have wanted to do this, and then we would be done. We'd have this over top of P minus 2. But they kind of just did a shortcut, and they left it like that, because that's the same thing times itself. That's okay, I don't mind. You could do that, but just want you to see that these are the same thing. Okay, I'm going to try another one here. Opposite sign. Do it to the top, or the bottom, you got to do it to the top. Okay, so square the bottom, I get Q minus 10 down there. Remember how this is the same pattern. And we'll just use their little shortcut. And we got it. It's 2 of the same thing, so we'll just write it in parentheses and square it. Okay, now that one's a little crazy. A little bit more complicated, but I don't think it's too terribly hard. So you still, our division is basically all we can do is rationalize the denominators.